Call this 4:30 p.m. work session of the Brookhaven City Council to order. Madam Clerk, if you call the roll, please.
Yes, Mayor J. Max Davis.
Here.
Councilmember Rebecca Williams, District 1.
Present.
Councilmember Bates Madison, District 3.
In the building somewhere.
He's here, just not at the meeting. Councilmember Joe Gebbia, District 4.
Present.
Okay, we have a quorum.
Okay. Opening remarks. If so many of you weren't here, if y'all missed the presentation on the proposed Brookhaven Innovation Academy, you missed a real treat. So I guess we can we have them presented? No, we don't have time.
Now?
Yeah, no, we don't.
I don't,
Maybe at council meeting we could.
yeah.
Right.
But they can always go online and watch it on tape.
Right, we can.
It's-
It's a proposal for an independent charter school for the city of Brookhaven that we're trying to help get started. It wouldn't be funded by the city of Brookhaven, it wouldn't be run by the city of Brookhaven, but it's something that we feel is an economic development issue for our city, and we're very excited about it, and we're going to move forward. Tonight, there'll be, at the council meeting, there'll be more opportunity for discussion on this issue as well. All right, upcoming agenda items.
Let me say, I just wanted to publicly thank Publix for donating the food for today's open house.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Publix. Go ahead, Marie.
Okay, for the upcoming agenda items, our first one is an ordinance for the Chapter 4 of our Code of Ordinances, Alcohol Beverages Ordinance. It's an update. Tim Tanner is here,
All right.
and our chief. Both of them will probably present and comment. Am I being heard?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good afternoon. Two short amendments to the alcohol ordinance, essentially to streamline the process when we have alcohol ordinance violations. The first on the agenda in regard to the hearing process. I think this further streamlines the process, and it provides guidance to the finance department of the timeline when you provide a hearing to the permit holder, and which you're required to do under due process guidelines. It was somewhat confusing in the prior or in the existing ordinance. So that's the first ordinance amendment. The second one provides the standards governing when and if the city decides to suspend or revocate the permit. It provides broad powers to regulate all sorts of activity that could go on a licensed premises. As you know, different things arise, whether it be noise, whether it be underage drinking, hundreds of different activities can go on. So these standards are broad enough to encompass that. It also, again, provides for an escalating suspension and revocation process. In our existing ordinance, we have some areas where it calls for automatic revocation. That does away with this, and it provides for that escalating scale. So if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
What was the foundation for coming up with your escalating?
I looked at some existing ordinances or statutes throughout the state, and that's just, I kind of just cherry picked those. I don't like putting anything like that in there. I just chose those numbers. You can certainly, if y'all have a higher number you want to come up with.
Okay, you're referring to what's on D1B, where on, looks like,
I did that and erased her up in
is
Mars.
the last
How about-
page where we talk about the first violation, the second violation, the third violation? It's the essence of this.
Yeah, essence. But feel free to provide guidance on how the city of Brookhaven wants to address those. If it wants increased or decreased, we'll certainly put those in there.
Okay, This is definitely so much fairer than what we've had on record before, which was immediate revocation, which didn't make a whole lot of sense. And if I'm not mistaken, Susan, didn't we have duplication somewhere as far as enforcement, like noise being over in one area or whatever? We're going to be
We're going
getting
to
into...
talk about that in a
Right.
few minutes with some of our,
Okay, but everything will be consolidated here now for the most part, as far as penalties, because we have multiple...
No, these are civil actions that are taken administratively. The
Gotcha.
actual noise ordinance itself will involve criminal.
Oh, interesting, okay.
This will only affect, of course, alcohol license holders, which, of course, a lot of problems arise sometimes from those premises.
Right.
And you're going to have noise problems, you're going to have fighting problems, you're going to have a bevy of different problems. This will be a way to control the license holder himself. You're going to operate an alcohol establishment, you need to have sufficient individuals on the premises to control fighting, control the noise. And that's a way to kind of control it from an administrative as compared to a criminal standpoint.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to read this for the record, so everybody understands what we're looking at.
All right?
And this is going to replace basically what was immediate revocation upon violation. The first violation shall result in license suspension for a period of not less than 2 days, which shall be scheduled to include Friday and Saturday, and a reinstatement fee of $500. The second violation within a 24-hour month period shall result in license suspension for a period of not less than 10 days, which shall be scheduled to begin on a Friday, and reinstatement fee of $1,000. Third, the third violation within a consecutive 24-month period shall result in license revocation. Yeah.
All right.
It's my understanding, this clarification came in somewhat at the request of the chief, is that correct?
Yes.
The other ordinance was either unenforceable or confusing?
Well, I think what we looked at was the other ordinance that city attorney was talking about was, we had one that was, there was so much differentiation, we didn't think it was fair. You had a revocation for serving after hours, however, if you served to minors, it was a suspension. So that's what we're just trying to formulate and have a standardized penalty, basically.
It came about, we had a violation of an after-hours sale, I think on a Sunday, or maybe on a Monday night. And the existing ordinance called for automatic revocation of the entire license. Whereas, like the chief said, you could sell to an underage and it was just a suspension. So that's the an inequity. And sometimes every license holder will have some violations. You may have somebody, kids are creative, they have,
Right.
you can have underage sales, and despite the good efforts of the license holder. So we think this makes it more equitable.
Okay.
And part of this, too, to include is this has to be adjudicated in court before we even bring it forward for this type of punishment.
Well, not necessarily that it does. That's always a good approach to take. However, sometimes it's not necessary that you have to have a criminal conviction to proceed administratively against the license holder, because you could have a situation where you have repeated fights on the premises. When the chief or the police officers go out and charge two individuals in combat, he charges them. See, the license holder is not guilty of disorderly conduct. So if I require criminal convictions against the license holder, I can never do anything. But what we need to hold him responsible for is that he's allowing it to go on his premises, on his licensed premises. So he needs to hire security personnel to prevent those fights from occurring. So that's the theory behind it. You disconnect it from the criminal conviction. Even though you can use that, you somewhat disconnect it.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much.
Are you comfortable with that, chief? I mean,
Yes, as far as the penalty, that's up to you, you know. I like the escalating type of punishment, though.
so where does the Alcohol Review Board come in this?
That's where, if you have a decision to suspend the license, you would give the license holder notice of your intent to do so. They have a time frame which they must appeal or let you know they want an appeal, and then it would be forwarded to the review board. And that's really the first ordinance that we'll amend, provides for that and provides the guidelines for the hearing before the Alcohol Review Board.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, the only
I'm going to suggest some minor amendments to what you're looking at.
some minor amendments, if you go to section E,
You know, page 7 of your materials.
Okay.
the last, excuse me, I'm sorry, 12, it should be on the second page. A12F, excessive noise. We'd probably add to excessive noise to give it a little more standards, leading to disturbance of the peace, neighbors, business. So that's the only real amendment to this we would probably add.
Do we have that in our, is that here tonight?
No, it's not. It would just be added to that.
When the motion is made, then we'll have an amendment adding those words to section F and also to delete the word repeated at the beginning of paragraph 12, where it just will read failure of the licensee versus repeated failure.
This is on page 7?
Yes.
Yes, of the work of the work
Session agenda.
session agenda
Yeah.
packet.
Okay. I see it, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Tim.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item, we'll have a fuller presentation at our council meeting, but is an initiative led by Councilman Gebbia, the Street Grace Program.
Greg?
We skip the purchasing and ethics?
It's going to be a more fuller
Oh,
presentation.
excuse me, purchasing. I'm on the
Sorry, Greg.
work session.
Okay.
Step back.
Go ahead and start while you're there.
Go ahead.
Right, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry.
It's okay.
All set?
I'll let you just go ahead, introduce
Okay.
yourself, and let
Okay.
them know what we're doing here.
My name is Greg Chevalier. I apologize, I've got a bad case of laryngitis today. I'm here on behalf of the Governor's Office for Children and Families that is supporting a statewide task force initiative known as the CSEC Initiative, or Commercial Sexual Exploitation of Children Initiative. And that initiative has been in place at the state since 2008. And before I talk about the context of this and the reason that I'm here to present an opportunity to the city of Brookhaven, I want to read a couple of recent fairly public headlines that you may or may have not been aware of. May 9th, Metro Atlanta healthcare executive, 58-year-old chief executive officer of the southern region of a national healthcare company, was arrested for the internet solicitation of the purchase of a 14-year-old child for sex. On April 22nd, a woman in Norcross is arrested and accused of trafficking 5 underage children for sex. On that same day, in an unrelated incident, an individual is arrested in Gwinnett County on the trafficking of 2 underage females for sex. In March of 2014, a Douglas County school principal is arrested on a GBI sting, one of 14, soliciting the purchase of underage children for sex. Less than 24 hours ago, on May 12th, a 27-year-old Atlanta father was arrested for the solicitation of selling an illicit photo of himself with a 1-year-old child deemed to be his daughter. All of the characteristics of these articles lead into the context of an issue at our state known as commercial sexual exploitation of children. I don't have enough printer paper or ink to print the number of incidents that happen in our state on a daily basis. As a result of that, the Governor's Office for Children and Families put this task force together because of a scientific research study that was produced in 2011, very specific to our state. The objective of this study was to bring the facts of this particular issue forward as it relates to our state. And what was troubling was the number of transactions and the demographic of the buyers, very similar to the characteristics of the individuals that are in these newspaper articles. In fact, this study produced a report that on average in our state today, there are over 7,200 men each month that purchase children for sex. In the next 24 hours, between 1 and 300 children, which are domestic children from our state, will be bought and sold for sex. That is a big problem. That was the reason this task force was put in place in 2008, was to bring awareness, education forward on this particular issue. I head up a work group known as Work Group 6 under the task force. Our work group is labeled Adults Aware and Knowledgeable. With the Department of Education and a nonprofit organization called Street Grace, we have built a sophisticated education curriculum that brings into the community the awareness of the facts of this issue. We believe that our shift has to now move from understanding the issue to suppressing the demand. You cannot have a state which has individuals of this capacity, executive of companies, fathers of children, women of children, that are prostituting the children and purchasing these children. We've got to create what we call social change in order to suppress that demand. We believe that education and awareness is a fundamental component to that, so that we become aware of the facts. This is not an airport issue. This is not an international issue. These are our children in our state. Part of the demographic of the purchase from this particular study shows that over 42% of the men that demand to purchase children for sex come from the suburbs. They come from these backyards, they come from our churches, they come from our companies. And our initiative at the governor's office task force level is to bring the designation known as Champion for Safe Children into 4 different organizations at the state: the city level, the corporate level, the neighborhood level, and the education level. So with that, we have developed a curriculum and 2 parts to designate an organization, Champion for Safe Children. The first part of that is that an organization, in this case the city of Brookhaven, agrees to certain criteria. The criteria that we've outlined, we've had support of Councilman Joe Gebbia in drafting. That is that all city personnel, staff, employees will go through the basic education on the essentials of domestic minor sex trafficking as we built this curriculum with Street Grace and the Department of Education. The second part of the criteria is that the city adopts a pledge, and that particular pledge has 3 characteristics to it. That the city, as part of the pledge, the city will walk in integrity, which by definition means not supporting businesses and/or activities that perpetuate domestic minor sex trafficking. The city will exhibit courage by raising awareness and speaking out against the issue of domestic minor sex trafficking, and that the city will leave a legacy. By that we mean fostering and maintaining an environment that protects children from exploitation and educates them and the adults about the dangers of domestic minor sex trafficking. The economic impact to a city is one of increased law enforcement, increased safety and security. In 2014, it is anticipated that the FBI will release a report that domestic minor sex trafficking is the #1 revenue-producing organized crime. In other words, people are more interested in purchasing children for sex than they are purchasing drugs or guns. With that, yes, sir.
Is this, I mean, I know this has been around for all time, but is this something that's increased lately or in the last few years, or is this something that's just becoming more aware of? What is the trend on that?
The trend on that is it has been around for a long time, but as a result of the studies and the research that we've been able to put in place through nonprofit organizations and support of organizations at the governor's office, we've been able to finally raise the facts about the issue and the size of the issue within our state as well as at a national level.
But, I mean, obviously, that this issue has been facilitated by technology. I think that's probably something that's caused the, maybe the uptick in it, if there seems to be one.
The internet has certainly increased the accessibility and the anonymity for individuals to attempt to purchase and sell children for sex. That has certainly raised the volume of transactions also.
And the part of the pledge, what businesses or activities would we not support that perpetuate domestic minor sex trafficking?
So, Mayor, that falls under the category of walk in integrity. And what we would ask is that the city promote to its employees and its staff that they would not support an illicit sex business. As a simple example, you would not patron a business like that on lunch hours or on city government hours, or certainly without the use of city funds. We would purport that you would not create any certain tax incentives to those types of establishments or business as well.
What kind of businesses perpetuate domestic minor sex trafficking?
Certainly the adult stripping industry and the illicit massage parlor industry are two of the primary.
Okay. Any other questions from any of y'all?
I'll just make a comment that we have always considered ourselves to be a pretty progressive city and council here. I mean, we exemplified that earlier when we talked about what we're looking at doing with education. And just like with education, our most significant asset is our children. And this is an attempt to really address an issue for those children that are really vulnerable. The objective of what we're working on here is to certify the city of Brookhaven to be the first city under this program to reach out beyond the nonprofit status of how this has been supported in the past, to reach out within, as Greg appropriately pointed out, city corporations, neighborhoods, and educational factors. So we have an opportunity here to break ground in something that could be extremely significant.
Yeah, the package, which I have formally penned and presented to Councilman Gebbia under the Governor's Office for Children and Families letterhead, indicates that the city of Brookhaven would be the first city in the state to adopt the pledge and complete the education curriculum, thereby receiving the designation from the Governor's Office for Children and Families as Champion for Safe Children. We would post that on the Governor's Office website, as well as provide appropriate material for the city to post on your website and public areas.
Well, thank you very much. It's a horrifying subject to talk about, but it needs to be talked about. And we appreciate your work and we appreciate what you're doing. And we'll certainly look at doing this pledge, I'm sure.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate your attention.
We're going to have Greg back at the evening session
Okay.
to make his comments.
All right.
Thank you very much, Greg.
Thank you.
All right.
Mr. Mayor, we're going to go back to item number 2, the purchasing and ethics policies.
Ms. Williams, gentlemen, we have reviewed this probably for 3 or 4 meetings, and I would recommend that we go ahead and have it on next month's regular agenda for approval. I am recommending just a couple of amendments to the Code of Ethics, and this would be on page 11 of your package, subsection D, acceptance of gifts, benefits, or remuneration as far as solicitation of members. I would like to include family members in that also, that if a family member were to do it on behalf of a member or on behalf of themselves, that would also consider to be an ethical violation. That would affect 2 places there. And then also on the next page, under page
Was that
12.
an ethical violation for the family member or for the?
Well, no, it would be for you. For the, I mean, for the member, for the
You
member.
don't know, what if you have no knowledge of something like that? How would that?
Well, then you wouldn't have knowledge, but you would, but the whole thing being is that if a family member has the ability to go out and coerce and encourage, perhaps take a payment thinking that he's going to help.
Just eliminates the straw man.
Right.
Okay, all right. So it doesn't
So
hold you culpable if you have
it's
no
not,
knowledge. Right.
it more likely than not would not occur without raising
Gotcha.
raising the alert issue in the member. So I just makes it clear, that you tell your family members, you don't need to be doing this stuff, okay?
Right.
And that also affects the number 2i on page 12, where directly receiving a gift, loan favors, and those types of things also, to take that into the case of the family member. I do want to bring, just bring to your attention in the definition of family member, as far as the situation of not using the word in-law, which really is not a defined term, but it's really using the rules that are associated with the laws of intestacy in the state of Georgia. As far as the definition, it's only blood related. So if there is an in-law, such as what was denoted to be your father-in-law, would not be covered by this. And I think we've had that discussion before, by virtue of the fact that it's really your mother's, he's not your wife's father. So, that's all I have there, unless you have some questions.
I thought we talked about this last time, but I thought the point I brought up on that issue was, instead of keeping it restricted to just blood, it would be positions of family influence.
It's whatever council chooses.
I mean, we all agree that our purpose in pursuing a clarification on this was to be transparent. And it was predicated on the initial perception of what was going on when Mayor's father-in-law got involved in doing a bid. Even though that bid was performed at a lower price and the job was done excellently, reality, perception became reality. So actually, what we're looking at here is a situation that really doesn't even address that area then, correct?
Well, that's correct. And if you wish to expand that, then you should then not only do it by blood, but also by marriage, which that can be amended and I know the mayor's conversation all along was.
I thought there was a way that there was a, through the public bid process that.
Well, through the purchasing policy, again, it gets to the definition of family member again and having a substantial interest. It does not take into this situation where there is a remarriage. If it's a familial unit, and this is because you gave the discussion that you won't even allow your father-in-law to ever bid again, regardless of what it says.
Right.
I mean, that's what you've said.
have to
And
wait till- he's
he
have to
won't
wait
do
till
it.
I retire
Wait
or
till
get
you
booted out,
retire or
right.
whatever it may be. But if that's, then again, your administration, is not forever.
Right.
This is not the Fourth Reich, so you can, you will retire.
You know,
So
this-
if you
this-
wish to do that, then I think that's reasonable.
Yeah, I'm not satisfied with where it is, for one, and really what we're not having a conversation on J. Max and just his father-in-law. What we're talking about here is precedent.
Right.
And what we're talking about is going to outlive us. So how we proceed as a city down the road and what we hold as our standards is really what's at issue.
Okay, so the way I will handle that.
I think we're all in agreement on that, by the
Okay,
way.
will be through providing marital status as the additional standard as far as the family unit goes, so it would cover the situation.
Right.
The word in-law is not, it's just not a defined word, so if it's.
This is going to cover an estranged stepbrother, too.
An estranged
I
stepbrother.
mean, it would be
That's right.
That's not familiar, I mean,
I mean, it can be a stepbrother, that's
Yeah.
right.
exactly.
Our attempt is to keep this squeaky clean.
Yeah. so-
And any place where there's potential influence, the bloodline just doesn't handle it.
Okay, the red line version, you'll see at the next work session, will have that plus some editorial typos
Excellent.
Okay.
that you'll see. And,
Thank you.
all right, then on the purchasing policy, again, it's, I've been through that, looking for typos. I've made a couple of edits of not of any substance. The issue that I've been directed toward in doing the final is that with respect to matters, items that have been appropriated within the budget, that the city manager has the authority to order goods and purchase goods and also enter into purchase orders and contracts for the purchase of those goods and services up to $50,000, other than the fact that she will give notice of what she's done after the fact.
Have we specified what that period of time, or?
What would you like? Shall we say, I will say as soon as we'll circulate a copy as soon as it's done.
My recommendation at the last meeting was that first council meeting, the beginning of each quarter. So we would have a quarterly report, just as a
Okay.
recap.
All right?
Again, these policies are not directed towards an individual, but setting precedent and to establish standards.
All right, would you prefer, so you want a quarterly report?
That would be my recommendation.
The other would be to go ahead and report it as it's done.
Right.
Yeah.
Marie, can you
I'd-
chime in on
I'd
your,
add something.
what's your preference?
I really don't have a problem of reporting it as soon thereafter as I can. I mean, if, keeping in mind that it might be a day or two, depending on what the workload is, but I don't have a problem with that. I mean, we're,
Just for thinking out about future city managers.
Well,
Is that the
well-
easiest way to go from flying?
would at least set a time frame, a date certain, so the idea of the first council meeting for every quarter, there would be an accounting, if you will, of everything that's been signed off.
Yeah.
I think at least then that's something you can expect to receive, and in the interim, you know, if something's going on, especially if it's an initiative of one of the council members or something that you're looking towards getting implemented, you know, my preference is that I would notify you all like it's been done, just so you're aware, but we could have that inventory, if you will, on the quarterly basis. And then also, we have the monthly reconciliation
Yeah, that's
that's
what I was
going on
thinking.
with the finance
All of these
department.
things would actually pop up in the finance
Yes.
report, wouldn't they?
I would recommend that, you know, all contracts are to be delivered to the city clerk, and as soon as she delivers that contract, then she would send a copy of it to council.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then
I agree with that.
that'll be one less report that would have to be done.
Yeah.
Is that my phone ring? I guess the vibrator didn't work.
Put your phone on mute.
I put it
That's
on
a-
mute.
Did we agree
We'll
it's
get to our
$5?
city attorney on
It's
you.
$5 into the bucket every time the phone goes.
Yeah.
Rebecca?
My preference would be to take Marie's recommendation that we get notified as soon as possible. And yes, I like the idea of the clerk sending us the copies of the contracts.
I think that would be the control. She gets the contract. And it looks like you have other controls which show the expenditures that would be taking place anyway associated with your financial report, so that there's the dual control that's there.
Right.
All right.
So, just 2 points on this. We initially had a $10,000 limit with Marie, and this was because we had new relationships and we wanted to proceed cautiously. We feel comfortable, obviously, and extended that to $50,000. But the conversation is what happens after you, and let's be really blunt about this. I mean, we're making sure that we want to try and keep this as transparent and as needed controls, provide the needed controls, so we don't fall into some of the pit holes that some of what may be going on in neighboring areas around the state. And I feel, I was happy with a quarter, I'm happier with after every contract, so.
Yeah, and the other thing, realize it's only appropriated contracts. So if it has not, the funds have not been appropriated, she cannot enter into those agreements.
Right.
That's
And
important.
that would be a violation of her duties.
All right.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you,
Okay.
Tom. Now, These next three, we're going to do something.
Yes, the next three items, you have a chart before you, and I'm going to let Susan make a quick comment, and Emily is here to address it just briefly, because we're going to come back, because there's more to it than just these three chapters.
Right.
These three chapters, 16, 14, and 7, noise, land development, and building regulations. Those three chapters include information about noise, as well as Chapter 1, dealing with penalties, as well as Chapter 9, as well as the zoning ordinance. So we're taking a broad look at who, what, when, where, why, and how much, because you have to look at what is noise, what is construction activity, how is the violation served, because when you read through these different ordinances, the penalties associated with it also relate to how the notice is served, whether it's in person or whether it's left on the property. So what Emily Macheski-Preston is going to explain to you in the memo that you have in front of you are the different complexities that are involved in trying to make sure we come forth with something consistent for you so that we can rely on what we have and so that we can enforce it properly and so that it's consistent. And that's from everything from what it is and what the fines are. In addition to what she shares with you, we also have supplied with her the different noise comments that we've received, as well as the violations that we've been looking at and that have been reported to us from building inspections, code enforcement, and land development. So with having said that, Emily?
You can see from the chart that we've got that there's quite a lot of amendments that are going to be needed to fix this issue. And the problem is right now we've got Chapter 1, Chapter 7, Chapter 14, Chapter 16, and Chapter 27, the zoning ordinance that could be affected. Any amendments to the zoning ordinance, we have to go through the public hearing phase. Chapter 14 actually requires a public hearing too. But each one of these chapters, we talked about this a little bit in the alcohol ordinance, you can have an administrative violation, and then you can have the criminal violation. And that's where you get the citation, you go to municipal court. Well, right now, the administrative portion of it is done differently under each chapter. And so there's a question, is the building inspector serving the notice, or is it going to be the police officer? Who's going to be citing it? To just make it easier to enforce, and to also kind of define what is legal and what isn't legal in terms of construction hours, construction, and all that. And so if you have any comments of things you'd like to be addressed, that would be helpful to me as I draft this, because it is going to be quite.
When do you expect this to come back up?
Well, I'm hoping next month,
Okay.
but depending on, I guess, the public hearing schedule, and then when we get into it,
We can just
how
email you
much
a-
discussion we have
Okay.
over it.
All right.
Something that I had mentioned before, would like to have a builder summit in, prior to our actually
Right.
adopting this, because I think that bringing our business, construction community in to talk about these issues is important part of this. I don't think we have anything on the schedule yet, do we, about that?
No, but we could schedule that. I mean, once we have a draft
Yeah.
of the ordinance, that we certainly, or ordinances, because we're going to be making amendments to all of those, we could hold that.
Yeah.
that summit.
Something that I think I brought up to the council before is that I would like to have us look at a point system like we see in our driver's licenses for our building community. Repeat offenders, if you're a repeat offender with your driver's license, you lose your ability to drive. I think that, sometimes these penalties and catching subcontractors when the general contractor doesn't care, you have to have an accountable person, that being the general contractor, and you need to have some real teeth to the ordinance that they know they potentially could lose their ability to do business in the city of Brookhaven if they're repeat offenders.
That would be we could do that for administrative
Yeah.
wise, and then we would also be able to have fines, which would come up in municipal court.
Yeah, I think some of the time, fines, don't carry quite as much weight as that ultimate, you could lose your suspension, lose your ability to build here, possibly for a period of time, maybe indefinitely, but you put some real teeth to an ordinance, they take it a lot more seriously. And look, the good builders is usually not as concerned about these things because they're not the offenders. It's the ones that are disregarding the ordinance that continue to surface up and create these problems for our community. So those are just my thoughts about it.
Well, we can email you comments over the next, we would like to, once you get the draft, we need to have that summit scheduled. So thank you, Emily, I appreciate it.
And we want to do it quickly, but you can see there's a
Right.
lot of room for error
Right. Yeah.
with all these. so.
Are we trying to combine noise regarding construction and also noise in general from commercial establishments all in one ordinance?
Well, right now, there's a noise ordinance, which is Chapter 16, and that was brought over from DeKalb County,
Right.
and it's DeKalb County's ordinance, and that kind of governs everything. But then you also are governing little parts of that noise ordinance in these each chapter. So we would probably draft them all in one and have it refer back to the main Chapter 16 would probably be the easiest thing. But for some things like construction deliveries, that's probably, that's the difficulty. Do you want to, doesn't really go in Chapter 16.
So I know, for instance, we've had some discussion about noise as it results from nightclubs.
Right.
Whether it's not just the sound of the music, but it's the vibration of the bass. I mean, is that going to be included in all of this?
That's in Chapter 16 right now, actually.
Okay. Okay.
It does exist currently in our ordinance.
I just want to make sure our chief is working with you on that because the enforcement of those issues on the noise violations when they get the 911 call about it, his input on what the officers can and can't do and how they determine it, we want to make sure it matches what the ordinance says.
Yeah, we have some suggestions about that too. For instance, just in terms of how to enforce it in a single-family dwelling without having to go in the house, things like that, so.
Well, and if we could have some kind of common sense measurements so that they don't have to carry around some sound detection device. I mean, if you can hear the noise, you can hear the noise.
There is actually a standard under the Constitution that's been tested and litigated and held
Okay.
up. It's considered plainly audible. I know that's kind of a hard thing to understand, but it is a defined standard.
So is there
in
no
that-
decibel level in our noise ordinance?
Right now, there is for commercial,
Is
so that would
is-
be for clubs
It's like we
and
asked
other
about this
things.
last night. Is there a leeway to reduce the decibel requirement or the
We could
threshold?
consider that.
All right.
When you get the decimal, though, you always are going to have that person that's licensed to have to come out there and do it before you can do a citation, though. That's the only,
That's what I'm trying to avoid.
Can avoid that?
Can we-
Can you get away from doing that?
you could.
Well, I
Okay.
mean,
But-
we heard two things. We heard that there's the audible standard, if you can hear it, and that's enforceable.
Right.
And we have the decibel level. If we guide them to a decibel level that would protect the audible, if the audible happens, well, then you can just rely on that. You don't really need the decibel.
Typically, they use the plainly audible in residential areas, Tim, do you? Yeah, and then the decimal right now is in commercial areas, but we could try to streamline it.
Well, as long as
It's the residential areas that are really a
Right.
major concern right now.
being affected by the commercial properties.
Right.
As long as we've got, we don't have to go have our police officers certified in some kind of sound engineering. That's what we want to stay away from.
Thank you, Emily. We'll do two more on this item, then we'll take a 5-minute recess.
Yeah.
Number 7,
You revised agreement.
Number 7 is resolution call for the election. That's to fill the vacant seat of District 2.
all right?
All right. Number 8 is the text amendment for the average front yard setbacks. We do have some maps. You should have them at your desk. One of the things that we talked about at our last meeting was to identify those areas in the city of the age of the homes. And so on your map, you can see that we have from years built, the oldest house in the city from 1842 to 1900, all the way to homes built in 2014, and they are depicted by different colors. And part of this capturing of this data was to illustrate, where the potential was for possible tear downs and what neighborhoods, have experienced that already, especially when you take a look at the the number of, or the areas that are shaded in purple for new homes that have been built from the year 2000 to 2014. You can see a lot of that on the Osborne Road area, and then, of course, on the south side of Peachtree Road in the Ashford Park community. But then you can also look at the other age ranges from the 1960s to 1980s and even the 1940s to 1960s, and I think that those were some of the bungalows that were of concern as to, should setback averaging for front yards continue. So this gives you an idea of the age of and the range of houses, residential throughout the entire city. And I would suggest that you might think about, if you're looking at limiting the areas for the average for front yard setbacks, that you might want to create a zone or a district, and that could then be applied on top of the zoning map, so that way it's clear and made available to the public as to what area is protected by front yard average setbacks. Or you can continue the ordinance that we now have, which covers all properties throughout the city. But I do think that this chart, or this map, does really illustrate the age of the inventory and the possibilities of change. There's also another map that's available to you that includes the Ashford Park, Dresden, or Drew Valley area, those two neighborhoods. And this map illustrates what that bold-faced line would be that would capture those two neighborhoods. And that would be a suggestion if you wanted to continue the average setbacks for front yards in those areas.
We have heard from one homeowner association in Drew Valley, from the president of the zoning committee, that they were supportive of continuing setback averaging in that neighborhood. I haven't heard anything from Ashford Park or from Capital City or anywhere else. But we'd like to start, and this isn't something I want to rush into. I want to make sure we do it the right way. And there are obviously different character areas in the city, and a one-size-fits-all approach doesn't necessarily work for everybody. It's not something we really want to impose. So we'd like to revisit this issue, and in places where it's important and people want it, and the majority of folks want that, and we should respect that wish, I think. In places where people don't necessarily mind, they would rather stick with the DeKalb County setback of 35 feet, or
Right.
whatever, 40 feet, whatever it is.
Whatever the zoning district
Right,
calls for.
then use the setback that's already in place.
Mm-hmm.
So we look forward to a discussion on that with neighborhoods, and want people to, give their input on what they feel for their area.
Right.
Is this information being given to the steering committees for the comp
I
plan?
was just going to mention, this is something that we can share with them.
Sure.
Absolutely, and, they can take that up in their discussions. This Thursday is a visioning session for the comprehensive plan. So, these maps could be made available just for people to take a look at, but certainly at the steering committee meetings, that could be shared, and we can put it on our website too, just to get some comments and feedback. And I think as the process of the comprehensive plan moves forward and the character areas are better defined and even refined as to where they are, this is going to be important information for those discussions.
I'd like to point out that there are two houses in the 1842 to 1900 range in Brookhaven. That's the Solomon Goodwin house, which is off of Peachtree down near the city line, near Colonial Drive. And then there's one off of Mill Creek. I've heard rumors about the house, but I heard it's an antebellum house. It's got a big nice brick gate, brick wall all the way around it. It's it looks like a couple acre property. Great property. Yeah. I think they're on Chambly Dunwoody. You might see Fisher Mansion there, which was part of it overlooks the Duville complex, that yellow spot. And then there's one, I think that's near Burnwick, isn't it, that other one, Rebecca?
Yeah, that's an old homestead back there.
Yeah, that's an old,
Not very historic.
it's not, but it's old, it's an old homestead. It was one of the few
Plot
houses.
of land,
Right,
yeah.
That's a huge plot.
yeah.
I'm sure this map will be available online.
Yes.
Thank
It
you.
is. Well, thank you very much. We take a 5-minute recess. I've got to take care of something, so.
excuse me, we've talked about this over the course of the last, few months, and we do now have some suggested language, and I'll turn that over to Susan Cannon.
You'll be right back. She went to get her phone charger.
Oh, she did?
Yeah.
Okay.
She thought the
Okay,
election was
well,
next.
I'll just introduce this as she makes her way back. You do have some suggested language before you, and the document is broken into two parts, concurrent variances, what that is, and then the application for the concurrent variances. Here she comes.
You don't have to get up anymore. You've got your
I
own
know, that's
microphone
right.
over there.
We don't
It's
need
a
to.
creature of
Creature of
habit.
habit, I guess.
But it's kind of hard for us to see you over there, so
That's
this
right.
is good.
What you have before you is some language regarding concurrent variances. We had talked to you about this some time ago. And the purpose of concurrent variances is to allow the mayor and council to consider concurrent variances in master planning. When you consider, I'm out of breath, I just ran up the staircase. Let me catch my breath. When you consider rezoning and special land use plan applications, and it will allow you to look at the master plan, consider flexibility of design with control, conditioned by the council. It would allow the public to be aware of the end product without passing it on to another board for consideration, and also for an applicant to be able to rely on predictability of what their master plan may ultimately end up being. So what you have before you is language that would allow the council to consider concurrent variances, and it would be part of the application at time of filing. It would be advertised, it would be considered with both the rezoning and special land use permit application. And what you have before you is language which identifies those items that could be considered for concurrent variance. So if you do see that it's appropriate to consider this process later this evening, we would like to ask you to allow us to initiate it for public hearing, to take it before the Planning Commission, to vet it with the public, to bring it back to you, to vet it again with the public before it were to be either adopted or not adopted as a process.
So we have the opportunity to decide which cases we would know those from first filing.
It would be required, if someone is proposing a concurrent variance, it would be part of the filing with the application, and it would be advertised as such. It would say rezoning request 2784 on Peachtree Road and concurrent variance for, a reduction in parking or whatever, whatever the case may be. But it would be known up front, so you would be able to look at that plan and control that plan and condition that plan to whatever you see is appropriate. And the public would be aware.
Okay.
One other point, too, and you'll recall from earlier discussions that we had on this, and that was when an application is filed for rezoning, by granting the rezoning of that property, many times it creates the need for a variance. And the concern that we voiced to you all was that when that happened and you entitled a property to a particular zoning, you really were putting the ZBA in a position of almost accepting the variance by default because the property was zoned, and now we have the applicant sort of in this limbo area as to, well, what happens now they've had their property rezoned, they can't develop the property because now they need a variance, and now the ZBA has their hands tied. This way, you get to review all of it up front, because if the request of zoning is going to create the need for a variance, you get to make that determination at the time that you're considering the rezoning of the property.
Okay, good.
To boil it down, I think, for the public to understand, really, the bottom line of what this change would do is it simply takes those requests out of a ruling by the ZBA and brings both of the issues before the city council.
That's correct. The ZBA would still have variance cases, but it would not be for rezoning or special land use permits. They would still have developed sites or sites that don't need to be rezoned or don't require a special land use permit. So the board would still have variance authority, but in this particular case, with a rezoning or a new development that requires rezoning or a special land use permit, it would come directly to the council with that master plan, with all of the variances to be considered at the same time.
Yeah, you know, one of the things I do like about it is that ultimately the voters have accountability with this council because they can vote us out of office if we make the wrong choices. The same is not really true for the ZBA. They're appointments by the elected official, by the mayor, and approved by council, but, you know, the accountability issues that really the buck stops here at this, you know, when you're talking about granting variances. So, and I would also contend that the council, mayor and council are the ones that are the most connected to the community in the fact that we have to interact with them all the time, knock on their doors and talk to them, and they're the ones that we hear those complaints. And I think it's sometimes hard for the public to get those messages over the ZBA. But a question I had about it was, how does that make us a quasi-legal body in which we're bound by some of the issues of the ZBA?
No. You're still bound by the same process. It's still the same process that you currently have in effect. You're not quasi-judicial.
Right.
The ZBA is quasi-judicial.
It's both quasi-judicial and quasi-legislative by virtue of the variance.
Yeah.
It's judicial by virtue of appeals.
They'd have the right to appeal to Superior Court.
That's right. But
yeah.
as far as your function is purely legislative,
Right.
and this is something you can do.
Yeah, okay.
I like the idea of speeding up the process for a developer. It means they don't have to go through then the whole ZBA process, which could be another couple of months, right?
Right.
I've spoken to several developers on this issue just to make sure I had a comfort level with it, and they were all in favor of it.
Well, I think it gives you the opportunity to look at the overall master plan, the overall design, and gives you an opportunity to perhaps cluster development and have a give and take that creates flexibility in design and creates a better plan.
Yeah.
So if you do see it to be appropriate, we'd like to ask that you later this evening allow us to initiate that for public hearing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next three items, 10, 11, 12, and actually 13, but beginning first with 10, 11, and 12. These are suggested sign ordinance amendments whereby, to provide for, to not provide for inflatable signage or to regulate better the LED signage, and then real estate signs that are for sale, the signs that sometimes proliferate themselves across our rights-of-way. And I've been working with Councilmember Williams on this, and as we were putting it on the agenda, the thought came, and the suggestion made by her was maybe there should be a small committee formed of people representing the real estate industry and also the signage industry, the vendors, just to get together with them to discuss this. And part of that discussion would be such as with the real estate signs, to set up a time frame and when they can go up, because we do want people to be able to advertise and sell their properties, and we want to be able to ensure that the city still looks clean and we don't have litter on a stick. And so that discussion, I think, would be very important. And many of them are abiding by some of these rules that our other cities in the metro area have, like, sundown on Friday, and then you remove those signs that sun up on Monday. So that would be part of the conversation. And so that this is just to give you a heads up, and the committee will be formed, and hopefully we'll be meeting very soon to get some feedback so we can come back before the council and then move forward on an amendment to the sign ordinance. Item 13 is also part of that sign ordinance amendment for banner signs, and we would ask, at this time too, that we'd be allowed to come back to discuss this further at another date where we can take a look at banners specifically, and if they have any impact or effect on the regulations of our zoning ordinance, which would then call for us to follow the Zoning Procedures Act. So we'll have more discussions with you about that at another date. Moving on, I don't have any items under other agenda items, but under other business, you have before you copies of task orders that have been negotiated. You know we're operating under a contract with our vendors, and it does provide for the allowance to renegotiate the task orders without changing the vendor. So you do have that information in front of you. The mayor wanted me to also review our current status of employees versus vendors, and I will mention that currently the city has what we would call 77 employees, but of that 77, 64 are the police department, sworn officers and civilian personnel serving the police department. So outside of the police department, we have 13 full-time city employees, and we have 3 part-time employees in our court that serve as clerks of the court, and we found that hiring them on a part-time basis, we were not required to have any benefits. It came in at a lesser cost to us than it did to continue with a vendor to provide that service. So that is just a reporting of where we are with our employee and vendor status, and then the task orders. Item number 2 is an update on the paving and sidewalk improvement list. I have a couple of charts that I'd like to review with you. This goes back to, and if you don't mind, I'd like to just review item number 2, 3, and then 4 and 5 will be all a part of that. I'll start with number 2, which is the paving and sidewalk update. This goes back to the Christmas list. And you'll see the, starting with sidewalks, the sidewalks that we had on there. And we had originally a $400,000 allocation because of the sidewalks and the length of the sidewalks and the improvements, and some of them were just not laying the concrete. We had to do a little bit of engineering, so it did increase the cost. And why I'm bringing this to your attention is we're over by $23,000. The $400,000 came out of the 2013 host allocation. And so I'm bringing this to your attention because I want to be able to pull out another $23,000 to complete these projects. That takes us then to the paving, which also came out of host. We had allocated, what was that, $200,000 for our paving of 5 roads, and we've just completed the last road, Pamela Drive. What we're looking at, we came in under, and we need another $57,000 to complete the project, and I'd like to take that out of the host funds as well. And that takes care of the paving plan and the sidewalk plan, which were the Christmas list of 2013. We also had funds set aside for a Christmas list on parks, and we've been working on that. And we allocated $200,000 out of the host funds, and I'm recommending that we increase that by another $115,000, and I'll explain why. Each of the council members gave recommendations within their districts of what they'd like to see as far as some park improvements. The Murphy Candler Park, we had the Murphy Candler Sports Association come in, and they took care of one of the bathrooms and entered into a cost share with the city on a 50-50 match. But there's another bathroom out there that needs some repairs, and we're estimating that at $15,000. Linwood Park, we're looking at some additional parking and lighting as we gear up that park for more activities and we program the space. So we're looking at $150,000 to expand some of the parking that already exists. And then there's a gravel lot that we wanted to provide for a more permanent parking lot there. Briarwood, we're working with Haven, who was trying to raise funds in the Ashford Park community. They had a project that was, they thought $30,000 for a small building with male and female restrooms, toilets, one toilet in each side of the building, and then, of course, a janitor's closet as well. Well, unfortunately, the raising of the funds for that came in low, and the raising of the funds were to be $15,000. The community was only able to come up with $7,000. So, but then the cost went from $30,000 to $40,000. So we have about $33,000 to $35,000 of a deficit there. So I'm looking at pulling $35,000 out of the host funds to do that. Then we've had requests on Blackburn Park. We're getting ready to have a day camp program that the YMCA is going to be providing for us, and they use the pavilion there. And the only bathroom that's available is over at the tennis center, so we're looking at providing a restroom there. And we're looking at the bathroom plans that we have for Briarwood to see if we can duplicate that. But looking at the overall park of Blackburn and the improvements, and we have the food trucks that are, going to start this week, we're looking at the idea of a second bathroom there. So I have $95,000 budgeted for that. That would take care of two restroom facilities, two buildings, which would be $40,000 each. But we need to do a little of engineering. I don't have a civil plan to locate the buildings on the ground, so we're estimating that to be $15,000. So that's a total cost of $95,000. Ashford Park, there was a request for additional playground equipment, and that was budgeted at $20,000. So we have a total of $315,000, of which $115,000 would be moved from the host funds. We do have the funds readily available, and I wanted to make that available for your review and approval. So later this evening, we'll talk about that on the agenda so that I can move those funds out of host and into these projects.
One thing that I want to make a point on is that I don't know if all of the parks have been contributing money to these projects, but I certainly would like us to give bonuses for groups that actually raise their own money to do things, rather than look at it as a cost savings to the city. Those funds raised by private citizens should be in addition to the parks money that we give. I mean, we should actually give incentives for groups
Right.
that want to raise their own money, where we'll give 1.5 times that money, because that's going above and beyond.
Correct.
And so I certainly think that the people over at Briarwood have raised, maybe they haven't raised all the money, but I'm not sure that have any of these other parks?
Murphy
Murphy
Candler
Candler.
Sports Association raised 50% of the bathroom that's already been completed
Right.
there. And this is the other restroom facility there that just needs some upgrades
Right.
at $15,000. This is really outside
No.
of the baseball
Right.
side of the park.
The other thing that I want to make sure is, where are we on the Parks Master Plan? And
Right.
how does this coordinate with
Well,
some of their suggestions?
And
from
I
that
appreciate you
consulting team?
bringing that up, because I did want to explain and show the differentiation as to why I'm talking about this now versus the steering committee and the Parks and Recreation Plan. This is outside of that, and these projects really don't affect what we're expecting to be capital improvements and suggestions for overall improvements to all of the parks in the community. In fact, last week, the mayor and I met with the steering committee for Parks and Recreation, and we talked about moving projects up on the list when they start developing that list, that if there is skin in the game by community groups, the Friends groups, or whoever would like to initiate, a community drive to put money into some of these projects so that they wouldn't have to wait, and the intent would be to accelerate or advance the project. So there seemed to be a lot of good reception to that, and we've already experienced that. I don't think any one of these, especially the bathrooms, are going to deter at all from the direction of the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. The parking and the lighting, Linwood is about to become activated, and we're very excited about that. Of course, the pools are going to be opening later this month, and we're looking at programming the gym with basketball clinics. There's going to be a day camp, summer camp for children out of Linwood beginning this summer. And we are looking at, I think kickball is out there now, and there's a softball that's going to be starting later this summer. And we need to have some parking, in the area. We have had a concept plan prepared to show us where we can capture more parking. It's not really tearing down any trees or making major improvements. It's just enhancing what we have. Some of it might be restriping, especially there in front of Linwood, in front of the center, on the street, that we'll have a little bit more parking there. And then going down to the pool, we can have some parallel parking there. And then on the backside, where the ball field is, there's a gravel lot that's being used right now for parking. So we just want to enhance it and make that more accessible to people. But because of the idea of activating now the park, we want to include some, what I'm calling pedestrian lighting in the park, because you have a way to get from the building down to the ball field and to the pool, but it's not lit. And it's a pretty fairly sized, large park there. And since there's going to be activity, I think if we had, light fixtures that were 20, 25 feet tall, that was respectful to the neighborhood that surrounds that park, and we illuminate it and we make it more safe, especially if we're going into this fall. We're going to have a basketball league operated out of that park. So, we'll have some night games and we'll have some night practices. So for safety reasons, I'd like to eliminate that with the current infrastructure that's out there right now. So this would just be improving or refining what's there, not to completely go astray.
One of the things I want to make sure we do is get bare minimums covered on all of our parks before we start doing capital improvements. I mean, when I look at the list, 4 out of the 5 are in District 1. We certainly are District 1 is very fortunate to have a lot of parks. But you've got, Joe doesn't have any parks in his
Right.
area. Ashford Park is District 2 at $20,000. District 3 has none, no allocations. I want to make sure that all of our parks at least have bathrooms before we
Right.
start going
Okay.
into this. And we have some parks that certainly have just sort of bare minimum kind of maintenance requirements that we need to bring back up to speed before we, I'm not saying that I want to prevent these projects, because I like the idea of getting utilization up in Linwood Park. But I don't want to do that at the exclusion of some of these other parks that, Brookhaven people feel very strongly about
Right.
that just aren't on the list.
Right. And I'm happy to add anything that you'd like. I mean, this is a list that we've been working on through Public Works.
Yeah.
And what brought this all about was the bathroom at Briarwood, because it
Right.
fell so far below the funds that we were willing to
Right.
match. And I felt that it was important it was brought before you all so that you understood that, they fell short.
Yeah.
Almost $33,000. And even though with our stepping in and trying to do 50%, it went from $30,000 project to a $40,000 project. So I was concerned about that and wanted to bring it to your attention. But, we have some host funds left, and we can add, some additional parks. And we can inventory those parks that have bathrooms or need bathrooms.
Yeah.
We have a great construction plan right now for a
Same
very.
bathroom everywhere.
Yes, exactly.
Well, even in the interim, I would like us to consider putting some portalets out in these parks, just as an interim move, because kids are peeing all over trees when they're out at these playgrounds. And we should give them a little bit better consideration than that. But I'm all for approving, I don't want to hold up any of these projects, because I know that Briarwood is sitting there with dirt turned up, and I would also like to see, I know we've got some property issues about Brookhaven Park, but
Yes.
if we can get a bathroom over at Brookhaven Park, they've got one that just needs to be cleaned up or
Right.
opened. That's in the back, I think, uncontested. So, my 2 cents.
Good.
I would just add that at Blackburn Park, that's kind of moved up a little bit in terms of urgency. It's, we're talking about a bathroom right by the pavilion, which is rented every day of this month, next month, and the following month. It's where the YMCA holds its summer camps. And they traditionally put out a couple of porta-johns, but the closest bathroom is the tennis center. So we're and the YMCA is willing to contribute, is it $10,000 towards this too? So we're hoping to use the same design as the Briarwood.
Yeah, that's great.
And get it up.
Green technology.
Well, actually, we're looking at solar panels for the pavilions, and there's no reason why we couldn't look at that for the bathroom structures too.
those
I mean,
waterless
we're
tanks.
exploring all of that.
Okay,
Great.
all right.
Okay. That takes care of the work session agenda, and now we go on to the council agenda, and we should be able to move quickly through this. We do have a consent agenda. I guess I save that for any, discussion that you'd like, and I would like to just move on, just out of respect for time, to reports and presentations, because we did go over some of this in our work session. We've already heard about Street Grace, which will have a formal presentation during our meeting. We also have the appointment of the Technical Board of Appeals. We're renaming it the Construction Board of Appeals. So we are looking for names. Also, Councilman Gebbia wanted to discuss the appointment of a pilot sanitation review steering committee, now that that's been launched. The chief has some commendations to make. We do have a recognition and appreciation of the recent participation from the Capital City Club on the scholarship fund for the police department that they hosted, and he'll be making that presentation along with Bates. And then there's 6 and 6 repeated, so it's only, we're only going to talk about it once, and that is the parks purchase update, and I'll let Tom talk about that. He and I did have a meeting yesterday with the county attorney, the assistant county attorney, and also the county manager.
You want me
Yeah.
to discuss it now?
Yeah, or you want to wait, whichever.
Wait until the regular
Yeah, we'll
meeting.
wait.
We'll wait until the
We
regular
could just
meeting.
wait. till
We'll wait.
the
All right,
meeting.
and then we're going to go over the zoning map update, and I'll do that at the council meeting. The sidewalk update you'll be getting from Public Works, along with the paving update. This is not, this is the current projects that they're working on. I'll give you an update, probably tag team it with our chief on where we are with the court construction that's occurring now in the police department. We do have the public hearing items, 1 and 2, which is the Chatcom, the 911, and that's the charges for the fees to collect. Old business is the SLUP, and that is the Ethiopian Club that you heard at your last meeting. New business is the consideration and approval to amend Chapter 7, and that is the renaming of the Technical Board of Appeals to the Construction Board of Appeals. We have a resolution where we identify, or definition of the term of employee, and this is for purposes of workers' compensation, and this is for the reserve officers that the chief has for the police department. The number 3 is consideration of Chapter 4. This is amending Section 4-55, suspension and revocation. That's under alcohol. Item number 4, consideration to initiate a text amendment. That's for the concurrent variances you've just heard Ms. Cannon discuss. Number 5, consideration to initiate a text amendment for average front yard setback. I would ask you to defer that until we can get some feedback by posting this on the website, the map that we shared with you tonight, and then also having conversation with our steering committee. Number 6, consideration to amend the sign ordinance. We need to defer that so that we can come back to you all with recommendations on that matter. And that's all that we have.
I have a note.
Oh, go ahead.
We made a last-minute change. We took the contract for the city manager off of the consent, moved it down under new business. This is going to be the first item on new business.
I also would like to request just to move the commendation for the Brookhaven Police Scholarship Golf Tournament. They have a time commitment and it has to be moved up to the top of the.
You want to do it under opening remarks?
Yeah, if
There.
we could do it sooner rather than later, that I think that they have an obligation that they let me know that they need to get out as quickly as
Okay,
possible.
we
so,
could do that.
Be great. Thanks.
Also, you should have before you, if you don't already, you will, under the consent agenda, there were just some minor changes to item number 6, which is the Murphy-Candler Park Land Use Agreement. There were very minor refinements, and we can discuss those under the consent agenda, or we can talk about it right now. But it had to do with insurance coverage. We've worked that out. The Murphy-Candler Youth Association or the Sports Association will insure their own equipment. Of course, we will insure the buildings and all fixtures that are on, on the park. The other item was,
As far as the casualty, as far as the liability insurance, each is providing liability insurance, naming the other as a additional insured under their policies, and then there was some clarification relating to the renewal provision each year to comply with state law.
right. And then the last item was, we had requested information on the registrants as to what their road address was. We didn't want a numbered address. We just wanted to know what street they were on so we could review on an annual basis the percentage of users, if they're Brookhaven residents or if they're coming from outside, just so we have an idea of that. So outside of those changes, everything is in accordance, and in fact, that was completed late this afternoon, and our city attorney and also Laura Cosgrove was there too, who's been handling this contract. So, do we want to go into executive session now?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, we do need an executive session for purposes of litigation.
Do we need to have a motion for that?
Yes.
Yes.
I move just the one issue, just litigation.
Litigation and also to discuss a contractual matter.
Right.
Thank you.
I move that we move to executive session to discuss a litigation matter and a contractual obligation issue.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. So passed.
Executive session.
That's your PDF.
Is there a motion?
Click on it right there. It comes up.
I move that we end the executive session.
Same box and it minimizes.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor of ending the executive session, signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Okay.
I move that we end the work session.
I second.
Any discussion? All in favor of ending the work session, signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right.